So today we're going to dive into a case that starts with something we all do, a few clicks on social media, but ends up asking these huge, profound questions about justice, the law, and really, the price of knowledge itself.
And let's just start with this absolutely shocking statement from the man at the center of this whole story, a PhD physicist named Chen Jingyuan. Now, this isn't just some dramatic turn of phrase. This is a literal quote from a letter he wrote from prison using his own blood. He's claiming there's this corrupt, targeted prosecution against him. It's a desperate cry for help that really forces us to ask, how on earth did he get here?
Okay, so to really get what happened here, we first need to understand the man himself.
Chen Jingyuan is, well, he's not your typical defendant. We're talking about a highly trained academic with a PhD in physics, specializing in these incredibly complex systems. I mean, he's worked in astrophysics, defense, AI, the whole gamut. He calls himself an independent scholar, and he's driven by this simple but really powerful motto: life is endless and so is learning. This is a guy who has dedicated his entire life to study.
But in 2023, that lifelong pursuit of knowledge led to, well, this, a stunning outcome. He was charged with picking quarrels and provoking trouble, which is a notoriously vague offense, for doing something millions of us do every single day: liking, sharing, and commenting on stuff he saw online. And the sentence for that? 20 months in prison. It just raises this one crucial question: how?
The whole legal battle really boils down to two fundamentally different interpretations of his actions. Two completely conflicting stories. Let's dig into those now.
So on one hand, you have the court. They painted this picture of him as a malicious actor, right? They argued he knowingly forwarded false information to insult leaders and that it caused severe public disorder. And in this bizarre twist, they actually used his PhD against him, saying that because he was so educated, he should have known better. But Chen's defense tells a totally different story. He argued that, as a scholar, he knows you can never be certain about the absolute truth of anything. He said he caused zero disorder. I mean, his account had very few followers. And this is the real kicker. He claimed this was selective enforcement. He pointed out that thousands of other people shared the exact same content and nothing happened to them.
This whole situation, it forces us to zoom out, to look beyond just this one verdict and ask a much, much bigger question about the nature of law itself. There's this legal philosopher, Lon Fuller, who came up with a really fascinating idea called the inner morality of law. He basically argued that for a legal system to be legit, it can't just be a list of commands from on high. It has to follow some basic principles, like being clear and applying to everyone equally. Without those things, he said, it's not really law, it's just raw force. So, how does Chen's case stack up against that idea?
Well, when you hold Chen's case up against this test, it fails pretty spectacularly. The principle of generality? Failed. The law was only applied to him. Clarity? Failed. The crime of picking quarrels is famously vague. And congruence, the idea that what officials do has to match what the law says, that failed in a big way. According to Chen, a prosecutor on his case just flat out said, "I think it's a rumor, so it is." Just, wow, that replaces any legal standard with just one person's opinion.
And you know, this isn't some new idea. Civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. talked about this exact thing. He said that when a law isn't applied equally to everyone, it just becomes a tool of oppression. Selective enforcement, as he so powerfully put it, is difference made legal.
And when a legal system starts to fail these basic moral tests, it's not just some abstract academic problem anymore. No, this is where we get into the real-world harm, the tangible impact on a human life, and on society as a whole.
Okay, so there's another philosopher, Martha Nussbaum, and she developed what's called the capabilities approach. It's a bit of a fancy name, but the idea is actually pretty simple. She argues that a just society isn't just about rights on a piece of paper. It's about whether people have the real opportunity to develop their core human capabilities. You know, to think, to reason, to form relationships. It asks a simple question: did this verdict help or hinder Chen's ability to live a full, dignified, flourishing life? And this is what's so powerful about looking at it this way. The damage wasn't just he went to jail. It was a systematic assault on his humanity. His capability for thought was attacked by punching him for the very act of accessing ideas. His practical reason was denied when a judge reportedly just screamed "shut up" at him while he was trying to defend himself. His need for affiliation was destroyed by labeling him a criminal, and his control over his own environment, well, that was taken away completely by stripping him of his liberty.
All right, let's switch gears to another way of looking at this: utilitarianism. You might have heard of it.
Thinkers like Peter Singer champion this idea that the most ethical choice is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So, let's do the calculus. Did punishing Chen actually produce a net benefit for society, or a net loss?
And when you do the math, so to speak, it's pretty clear this was a massive net negative. The harm to Chen himself? Immense. The harm to society? Also incredibly high. It creates this chilling effect where other scholars are now terrified of sharing their ideas. And the benefit to society? Basically zero, since the court never even proved any actual disorder happened. So you have all this suffering and fear created to prevent, well, nothing.
This brings us to our final way of looking at all this. When the law fails the test of morality and utility, when it's unjust and causes more harm than good, what is a person of conscience supposed to do? This reframes Chen's case into a classic story of an individual taking a stand against the machine.
You've probably heard of Henry David Thoreau and his famous essay on civil disobedience. His whole argument was that when a law is fundamentally unjust, a moral person doesn't just have a right to resist it, they have a duty to. And you do it peacefully, and you have to be willing to accept the punishment because that's how you expose the injustice and hopefully awaken the conscience of society. Looking through this lens, Chen's letters from prison, they aren't just a defense, they're a deliberate act of protest.
And if you look at what Chen did, it fits this framework perfectly. It's almost like a textbook example. He followed his conscience as a scholar. He resisted injustice with his letters and his refusal to confess. He tried to awaken society with that incredibly dramatic blood letter. And by accepting his prison sentence, he's aiming to prove the fundamental injustice of the very law he was convicted under.
So, this is the crucial point. This perspective completely reframes his situation. As Thoreau famously wrote, when a government starts imprisoning just people, then prison itself becomes the only honorable place for a just person to be. The prison cell is transformed from a place of punishment into a moral high ground.
The case of Chen Jingyuan is a story about one man in one country, but it leaves all of us with a universal and incredibly urgent question for the world we live in right now. In this digital age, where 1 billion conversations are happening every single second, when does a like or a share cross that line from simple expression into a crime? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide?